Thank you all for being here today. It was 1 year ago today that I was sworn in as Circuit Attorney for the City of St. Louis. And prior to that, as a citizen of the City of St. Louis, from the outside looking in at the office, what I saw was an office that was in near collapse and an office that was really ceasing to perform its vital role in our criminal justice system. And it caused me to ask myself the question of whether or not I was witnessing a collapse of the rule of law in St. Louis, the city that I love. So when the opportunity arose for me to serve in this role and be part of the answer to restoring the office to performing its vital role in our criminal justice system, I welcomed the opportunity. At the time that I accepted the appointment and was sworn in, I didn't know how it would go. And I knew that in order for us to be successful in the Circuit Attorney's office, it was going to be completely dependent upon who was going to be willing to join me in this important work. Fortunately for the citizens of the City of St. Louis, the response to that question has been overwhelming and humbling. I knew that if we were going to turn the Circuit Attorney's office around, it was going to start with leadership. And that's why my initial focus was on building a strong senior leadership team. The first person I reached out to and hired was Marvin Tier, who had served as Chief of Homicide under Circuit Attorney DeJoyce Hayes, and is someone I've known for a long time and is a committed public servant. He agreed to return to the office as Chief Trial Assistant. I was very fortunate that before I even was sworn in, Mary Pat Carl, who had previously served under Jennifer Joyce as Chief of Homicide and also Chief of the Special Victims Unit, agreed to return to the office and serve in the role of Chief of Homicide. And was also fortunate that Steve Capizzi, who had previously served under Jennifer Joyce as the Chief of the Misdemeanor Unit, agreed to return to the office and serve as Chief Warrant Officer. Those three, in the very early days of my administration, made up my executive committee and have really been the key to leading our office back to where it is today, where we are once again performing our vital role in the criminal justice system and are an effective, competent prosecuting attorney's office. In a stroke of very good fortune, we were able to add former Supreme Court Justice George Draper to our executive committee team this fall. He agreed to come back to the office where he served as first assistant under Circuit Attorney George Peach prior to beginning his career on the bench. He agreed to return as our chief training officer and also now serves as the head of our conviction integrity unit. In addition to those leaders who have helped us restore our effectiveness on what I call the court-facing side in terms of going into court and handling our cases and handling our dockets, there have really been a lot of people working behind the scenes helping us restore the operations of the Circuit Attorney's Office. My former law partner at Bryan Cave and Dow Bennett, Terry O'Toole, joined the office and came back with me to help with the administrative side of the office. Jeff Jameson, a longtime circuit attorney who served under George Peach, came back and has been helping as my co-chief of staff. And my good friend Mark Darrell, who recently retired from Spire as their chief legal officer, has agreed to join our office and help in terms of restoring the administrative side of the office. In addition, Jane Darce, who was a longtime first assistant under Jennifer Joyce for 17 years, longtime assistant circuit attorney, has been really with me from day one in terms of helping me figure out how to restore the operations of the circuit attorney's office. So it has been really with the aid of tremendous leadership of experienced prosecutors that we have been able to put the office on a trajectory that it is on today. In addition to those senior leaders, in total, we've had 33 attorneys join our office in the past year. Of those 33 attorneys, 20 are former prosecutors. Collectively, that represents over 130 years of prosecutorial experience and hundreds of trials trying some of the most serious cases in the state courts. We've also added a lot of great young attorneys who we believe will form the foundation of the future of the Circuit Attorney's Office. In addition, and this probably isn't spoken about enough, we've hired 26 support staff, victim services advocates, investigators, paralegals, computer operators, just people who are really the key and the backbone of the office. We've added 26 support staff people, and they've come back and have been tremendous, and a lot of them had prior experience in the Circuit Attorney's Office. I am also extremely proud of those 22 trial attorneys who were here in the office when I was appointed, and those support staff who were here in the office when I was appointed. They have, they really, kept the office afloat during that time when things were difficult and at their most difficult point. They were what kept the office from going into complete collapse. And when I was appointed, they embraced the change that came. They embraced the change in culture, and they have integrated seamlessly with the attorneys and support staff that have been added to the office. So today, we do stand as one united Circuit Attorney's Office serving the citizens of St. Louis. Also, one of my focuses in those early days was to build a strong collaborative relationship with the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. That started in my first week in the administration, when I met for a couple hours with Chief Tracy, and we talked about ways we could work together. It started in that first week when we reopened the Warren office, and we reestablished that collaboration up and down the ranks between assistant circuit attorneys and St. Louis Metropolitan Police officers, that daily collaboration on building cases and prosecuting cases and being an effective office for the people of St. Louis. My focus from the time I was appointed, I said, was to aggressively prosecute violent crime. That has remained our focus. That work really began with first looking at the Warren office backlog. When I was appointed, there were 6,700 applications for warrant in the Warren office that had been unreviewed. Those are 6,700 instances of St. Louis Metropolitan Police collecting evidence, making arrests, submitting those applications for review, and those applications simply weren't reviewed. What this means is that the defendants who were charged in those applications for warrants were released after 24 hours. That was a threat to public safety, and that's where we first focused our attention. When we began to review those 6,700 applications for warrants, we found in those applications for warrants 9 homicides that had been unreviewed. We reviewed those, made charging decisions, and issued where appropriate. In addition, there were hundreds and hundreds of violent felonies that had been unreviewed. We reviewed those and made charging decisions. We found that in a number of instances, there were defendants who had multiple cases in that warrant office backlog. And what that represented were violent offenders who had been arrested, evidence had been collected, and they had never been charged, and so they were released back on the street to continue committing violent crimes. We know that the violent crime problem in St. Louis is driven by a small group of individuals who commit the vast majority of the violent crime. And we know that the effective prosecution of those defendants has a direct impact on public safety in the city of St. Louis. So our work this year, we know, has saved lives. We know that it has improved public safety in the city of St. Louis. And we know that if we continue our work and continue working in collaboration with Chief Tracy and the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, we will continue to enhance public safety in the city of St. Louis. In addition to the warrant office backlog, on the day that I was appointed, we had 250 homicides pending in the circuit court for the city of St. Louis. How does that compare to the historical number? Historically, you have somewhere between 100 and 115 homicides pending at any given time. So it was essentially a 100% increase over what is the historical norm. This past year, we have resolved 70 homicides. That's a big number. But as we stand here today, we still have a homicide backlog of 237 homicides pending in the circuit court for the city of St. Louis. So we have much work ahead of us. Part of the reason for that 237 homicides pending, even though we resolved 70 of them, is because we're charging homicides at a higher rate. We're conducting better investigations and making timely charging decisions. And also, there were 30 cases that have been submitted to us by the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department where they said these cases were declined under the prior administration. We disagreed with that charging decision. We would like you to take another look at them and tell us whether or not you agree with us that these are cases that can be prosecuted. So far, that has resulted in 5 cases that we've issued on out of those 30, and we continue to take a look at those cases. Just another example of where having that effective collaborative relationship between St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department and our office, a relationship built on trust and professionalism and mutual respect, how that productive relationship pays dividends for the citizens of St. Louis. We have also focused on prosecuting those who engage in reckless driving that results in injury or death to residents in the city of St. Louis. We, this year, prosecuted the Daniel Riley case, the case where there was reckless driving that resulted in a 17-year-old losing her legs. And we will continue to aggressively prosecute reckless driving cases that result in injuries. In fact, it is the policy of our office that all of those cases, all reckless driving cases resulting in injuries, comes to our recommendation committee for review by our most senior attorneys. And we will continue that policy, and we will continue to prosecute reckless driving crimes to the fullest extent of the law. In addition to our office's focus on the prosecution of violent crime, we have been focused in 3 other areas as well: community engagement, diversion, and conviction integrity. In terms of community engagement, we know that in order for our office to be effective in our work, we need to have a strong relationship with the community built on trust. We know that the community has to understand what our office is doing, they have to believe in our mission, and they have to respect that we are going to exercise the tremendous faith that they place in our office with integrity. I began going out and meeting with community groups in the first weeks of my administration. It is important work. It is important to listen. It is important to be transparent and have the community understand what our goals and objectives are. By the end of June this year, we would have met with over 80 community organizations. That's including neighborhood associations, business associations, criminal justice reform groups. We really have been trying to reach out to everyone and anyone who's interested in what we're doing and is seeking to engage on the issues. And that's work that we will continue. And it's work that we know will pay dividends in terms of building greater witness cooperation, creating victims who are more willing to come forward and be part of our prosecution of the crimes that have been committed against them. And really, just across the board, concerned citizens being more engaged and participating in the criminal justice system in our prosecution process. One thing that I have said many times since my appointment is that I understand that charging someone, prosecuting them, and putting them in jail is the least efficient way to prevent crime. It is necessary work, and it's work that we will do, and we will perform that work at a high level. But in instances where there's an alternative to that approach, we need to pursue it. And that is why I have made it a priority to invest in our diversion unit. Since I have been in the Circuit Attorney's office, we have hired 3 social workers to serve in our diversion unit. Prior to my appointment, there were no social workers in the office. And we've hired 2 attorneys, one attorney, Jennifer Lorenz, who served as the drug court prosecutor under Jennifer Joyce and is a professor in Forest Park Community College. We've hired her to lead our diversion unit, and we've hired another attorney to serve in that unit as well. So it's a 5-person diversion unit, 2 attorneys, 3 social workers. That's the biggest diversion unit in the history of the Circuit Attorney's Office, and we are excited about the work that they will do. They will work with first-time offenders, nonviolent offenders, people we believe have the potential and the opportunity to get their lives on the right track and not become habitually involved in the criminal justice system. This work is important because it reflects for the community that we are an office that believes in second chances. We believe in basic fairness. It is important work because we know that diversion works. There are many successful diversion programs throughout the country that have been effective in giving people an opportunity to get their lives together and get back on track. And you do that by connecting people with services that already exist in the community and monitoring them during the diversion process and giving them that opportunity. And finally, diversion is an important part of our work in the Circuit Attorney's Office because it permits us to focus our resources where they are most needed, which is on the prosecution of our most serious violent offenders. Also, I've reestablished the Conviction Integrity Unit. Judge Draper has agreed to lead that unit. Just last week, I was personally in court on the Christopher Dunn case, which is a case where we filed a motion to set aside his conviction because we believe that the conviction was wrongful. It was based on the testimony of 2 children who have since recanted that testimony. And we thought it was important for us to move to vacate the conviction and seek justice for Mr. Dunn. We just filed our final briefs on that case yesterday. The Conviction Integrity Unit is important, number 1, because it reflects that our office wants to get things right. It reflects that we understand that the criminal justice system is not infallible and that we are willing to take a hard look at ourselves when that is appropriate. Again, it communicates to the community that we are an office that operates with integrity. And when you have a situation where there is a respect in the community for the criminal justice system, it works to increase public safety because people believe that the criminal justice system can deliver fair results, and it reduces the likelihood that people will try to take matters into their own hands. It increases the likelihood that people will cooperate and be witnesses in prosecutions. My vision for this office going forward is that we will be one of the highest performing prosecuting attorneys' offices in the country. What does that mean? That means that we are a prosecuting attorney's office that the vast majority of St. Louis's can look at and see as competent, fair, operating with high integrity, and in the interest and service of the community. We are not there yet. We've got a long ways to go. We are still understaffed, and we're working on improving that. We've hired 7 new attorneys straight out of law school who are going to join us in the fall. That will give us a big boost. But there's going to still be much work to do. We're going to have to work to get those attorneys trained really on an expedited manner and get them functioning at a high level sooner than they typically would need to. That is why Judge Stroper's role as Chief Training Officer is so important. Long term, if we're going to have a highly effective prosecuting attorney's office, we're going to need to invest in competitive salaries, training, and technology. Those things are the lifeblood of any successful prosecuting attorney's office. And if we don't invest in those things, we will not have the prosecuting attorney's office that the citizens of St. Louis deserve. During all of my community meetings, where we've been all across the city, and I've listened to many, many people, north, south, west, throughout the city, share with me their concerns and fears. I've come to understand that fundamentally, we all want the same things. We want to live in a city that is safe. We want to go about our daily activities feeling secure. We want to pursue our dreams in this city and be safe in doing so. As long as I continue to serve as circuit attorney, I will spend every single day striving to make the city of St. Louis safer and a more just community. And with that, I will take any questions you have.
You mentioned that you're seeking, that you're going to need an investment in technology and salaries and things like that. And I believe the Board of Aldermen already granted an increase for salary, but I'm curious, what would that investment look like? How much money do you need? What are you specifically asking for here?
So we've submitted our budget for this year, and I was at the budget committee yesterday, and where we are in terms of our submitted budget and the gap that currently exists is about $538,000. So in terms of our budget requests and what we need for this upcoming budget year, that's right now the gap is $538,000. Had a good meeting with the budget committee yesterday and feel optimistic that we can close that gap and get our full budget. Under the budget that we've submitted, we are requesting 58.5 positions. I know that we're going to need additional positions to cover the dockets that we currently have. Basically, I've mentioned that with homicides, our caseloads are roughly double what they have historically been. That's true across the board. Violent crimes are roughly double in terms of cases pending what they typically are. General felonies, same thing. Special victims unit cases, same thing. So we're dealing with huge caseloads, and we're going to need additional attorneys and support staff to handle that. And in terms of technology, I mean, that is the practice of law now. I can tell you that when I left my private firm and came to the Circuit Attorney's office, I took a step back in time about 15 or 20 years in terms of the technology available to us. And if we're going to be effective, we've got to close that gap. We're in a St. Louis City courtroom right now. It's one of the few courtrooms you'll be in, courthouses you'll be in, where there's essentially no courtroom technology in terms of presentation of evidence. So we've made investments in courtroom technology. I've seen a huge impact of that. We've made investments in improving the technologies in our office already, which I've seen improve the collaboration and work among our attorneys, right away. So those are just investments you're going to have to continue to make, particularly when you're dealing with a situation where we have twice the caseload. How are we going to do that? Typically, this office has been, I think, under the Jennifer Joyce administrations, the number was always around 55, 60. Okay, so since that time, in terms of the requirements on our office, in terms of bond review, we've got 2 full-time positions that are now dedicated to bond review that Jennifer Joyce never had to deal with. And that's because we want to be more effective in giving defendants timely bond reviews. So how do you close that gap? You do it with really effective use of technology, and that's what we're going to need to continue to invest in.
So the additional money you mentioned, that's the gap, like you said, $538,000. Is that also going to raise the starting salaries of some of the recent law school grads? And if not, how do you expect to retain those people given the private sector is a lot more lucrative?
Yeah, so we're not gonna, so none of that money is for salaries. We were able earlier this year to make some modest increases across the board in our office for the people that were back. We were primarily able to do that because we were understaffed, and so we had additional funds to support those raises of the people who were here, basically doing twice the work, right? So we've made kind of 2.5%, 5% raises where we can. Other than that, there's really been no increases in salary in the Circuit Attorney's office. The competition for prosecutors, paralegals, victim service advocates is intense. We've had some attrition this year. I think we've had 4 attorneys leave. I know that in 3 instances, the attorneys that left got increases in pay, and in a couple of instances, significant increases in pay. And in one instance, I know that an attorney who went to Lincoln County, which is a rural county, got an increase in pay from what they were making here in St. Louis City. So right now, I think we're benefiting from the fact that there's just a tremendous commitment by a number of people to come back and serve this office because they are aware of what happened in the recent past and they want to see the Circuit Attorney's office restored. But you can't count on that long term. So that's why I say if we want to have an effective Circuit Attorney's office, we're going to have to continue to make those investments. There's no other way around it.
And what would you say is, sorry, I'm going to take another question. What would you say is the biggest obstacle for clearing that homicide backlog? Is it still staffing? Would you say that that's still a major thing?
That is the biggest obstacle because, we were fortunate this year. Like I said, there was this tremendous community support for getting our office back on track, and people were willing to jump in and help. So people went to extraordinary lengths, right? The U.S. Attorney's Office agreed to take on 20 homicide cases for us. And they have some very experienced homicide prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office who come out of the Circuit Attorney's Office, and they agreed to come back, take 20 homicides for us. That help is going away. They're going to get back to doing their cases. They're not going to continue handling homicides for us. So that's 20 homicides that we're going to now have to manage to pick up. We had private sector attorneys from private law firms, Thompson Coburn, Sandberg Phoenix, Dow Bennett. We had those attorneys step up and say, we're experienced homicide prosecutors now in private practice. We're willing to take 10 homicides each. They took those 10 homicides and they've worked on them. That's 50 homicides that were being handled externally that we're now going to have to absorb in our office. What does that represent? Well, that's about the caseload of one homicide prosecutor. Currently, we have in our office 3 homicide prosecutors. So you asked me about that backlog. We're going to be living with it for a while. As I stand here today speaking to you, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to manage it. I don't know that Mary Pat, hopefully she's got a plan. But yes, that's a major challenge for us.
On the overall list of outstanding warrants that haven't been reviewed or are in the process of being reviewed, where is that number from, the 6,700 that you started?
That number stands at about 2,600. Those 2,600 cases, are your lower level felonies. Like I said, we went through and prioritized all of the violent felonies, but we just continue to work our way through those. Importantly, when I got here, my thing is, with respect to the warrant office, the first thing you say is, when you're in a ditch, what's the first thing you do is you stop digging. So we have been timely in issuing cases from day one. We've been making charging decisions within 24 hours. So the focus is on keeping up with the current caseload and making those charging decisions timely and keeping the warrant office running well. And the backlog, now that we've prioritized the violent cases, gotten those violent offenders off the street, it's less of a priority, but still a focus. We hope to get that closed out, in the next 3 to 6 months, but it takes resources that right now we're short on. When I refer to the fact that we have 58 and a half assistant circuit attorneys at this point, the half is an attorney who's agreed to come back part-time and works exclusively in the warrant office, exclusively on backlog cases. So that's one way we're trying to address that issue.
Any more questions? If not, we'll conclude. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.